Chapter 1. System of the Government. India is a parliamentary democracy. Our constitution makers first debated over the merits and demerits of the parliamentary and presidential form of democracy. Then, they decided to opt parliamentary system, as it created more transparent and responsible government. Additionally, the constitution makers designed the political structure in a uniquely federal way. Indian system of government includes center and state governments, local self-governments, governments union territories and scheduled and tribal areas. Introduction. The Constitution of India establishes a parliamentary form of government both at the center and the states. In this respect, the makers of the Constitution have followed the British model. The reason for this is that Indians were accustomed to this type of government. The essence of the parliamentary form of government is its responsibility to the legislature. The president is the constitutional head of the state. The real executive power is vested in the Council of Ministers, whose head is the Prime Minister. The Council of Ministers is collectively responsible to the lower house Lok Sabha. The members of the lower house are elected directly by the people on the basis of universal adult franchise for 5 years. Therefore, this government called a responsible government. Parliamentary vs. presidential system. For the last 2 decades, a debate has been going on in the country whether the present parliamentary system should be continued or it should be replaced with the presidential system, under which the president selected directly by the people for a fixed term. He will function as the nation's executive unhampered by the legislature in taking administrative decisions. He will also have the distinct advantages of choosing his ministerial team from among the best talent available in the country without being subjected to the pulls and pressures of elected representatives.
अरे
204. The arguments in favor of and against. General Studies, Mixed Paper. Presidential government are discussed further. Arguments in favor of presidential government. The presidential form of government claims that it has the following advantages. The chief executive in a presidential system is relatively free from sectional and party disputes. His term is fixed and thus, it ensures stability of the government. The president can devote his time for the development of the country. He is free to choose his team of ministers from the best talent available within the country. His choice is not restricted to elected representatives as in the case of parliamentary system. It discourages the disease of defections and maintains discipline among the members of a political party. Arguments in favor of parliamentary government. The parliamentary form of government has the following advantages over the presidential form of government. It is a responsible government. The government is subjected to critical observation in the legislature with regards to its achievements and failures. The ministers are accountable to the legislature. The Indian Prime Minister, who enjoys 2/3 road majority in Parliament, is much more powerful than the President in the USA. There is nothing to prevent the Prime Minister to choose the best talent from outside for his cabinet and get them elected or nominated to either House of Parliament. The disease of defection can be removed by appropriate legislation. View of framers of the Constitution for parliamentary system. The framers of the Constitution preferred the parliamentary system of government mainly for 2 reasons. These are given as under. 1. The system was already in existence in India and people were well acquainted with it. 1. It provides for accountability of ministers to the legislature. However, the experience with parliamentary form of governance draws mixed results. It has become a more stable system now, but slow pace of reforms under it need urgent attention of lawmakers. Drawbacks of Indian parliamentary system. The Indian parliamentary system suffers from the following drawbacks. Multiplicity of political parties. The existence of too many political parties has resulted in unstable governments and even created problems in the formation of governments. A number of governments have fallen due to the multiplicity of political parties and coalition politics. Due of this, it is not possible to have a strong opposition in the legislature, which is essential for parliamentary form of government. Evil of defection. The evil of defection has been threatening the basis of our parliamentary system, resulting in unstable governments. To cure this evil, Parliament enacted the 52nd Amendment in 1985 and added the 10th schedule to the Constitution. It laid down the process by which legislators may be disqualified on the grounds of defection. A member of Parliament or state legislature was deemed to have defected if he either voluntarily resigned from his party or disobeyed the directive of the party leadership on vote. Independent members would be disqualified if they joined a political party. Nominated members who were not members of a party could choose to join a party within 6 months. After that period, they were treated as a party members or independent members. Indian government and political dynamics. 205. Drawbacks of presidential. The law also made a few exceptions. Any person elected as speaker or chairman could resign from his party or rejoin the party if he demitted that post. A party could be merged into another party if at least 2/3 vote of its party legislators voted for the merger. The law initially permitted splitting of parties, but that has now been outlawed. Lack of cohesiveness and leadership in national parties. Lack of unity and cohesion in national parties and behavior of the members of the different groups within the party have weakened the authority of the leader of the party, who becomes the prime minister. It has been seen that the prime minister has to devote much of his time in solving party disputes, and little time is left for him to look after nations' work. The prime minister has to satisfy different sections and groups among his party by giving them ministerial posts. Illiteracy of voters. A vast majority of our electorate is illiterate and politically immature. Their right of franchise is moved away on the basis of caste, religion, and money, etc. National issues are not considered by the illiterate voters. Growth of regional parties. The growth of local and regional parties arouse parochial and provincial feelings. This has also weakened the functioning of the parliamentary system. These regional parties are demanding more autonomy for the states and thus threaten the unity and integrity of the nation. Government by non-experts. As the ministers appointed from elected representative are not experts in their field, thus, it reduces the efficiency of decision-making. Violates the principle of separation of powers. The executive and legislature are not completely separable in this form of government. This violates the principle of separation of powers. Form of government. The presidential form of government suffers from following drawbacks. The conflict between legislature and executive is very common in this system. Many a times it becomes very difficult to resolve this conflict. Black Circle Executive is not responsible to the legislature for its actions and decisions, as executive is not a part of legislature and not examined by the legislature. Many a time, this system has given the space to dictatorial and autocratic tendencies. The executive enjoys narrow representation and does not enjoy popular support because the members are not directly elected by the people. Federalism. The Constitution of India establishes a federal polity which has been created by dividing the country into states and allocating them functions as specified in the Constitution. Like all other federations, India has a written constitution. There is a dual polity and division of powers between the center and states. There is also a provision of Supreme Court. It is the guardian of our Constitution and decides all disputes which might arise between center and states. Choice of federalism. The choice of federalism as a constitutional form in the basis of national government in India was not a sudden development. It was already in operation in British India in the limited form. For the solution of the constitutional problem of a multi-social, multilingual and multi-religion country like India, federalism was a natural choice. The seventh schedule contains 3 legislative lists which enumerate the subjects of administration. 1. Union list. It consists of 100 subjects like the defense, foreign affairs, railways, posts and telegraphs, currency, etc. State list. It consists of 61 subjects like the public order, police, administration of justice, public health, education, agriculture, etc. The concurrent list. It includes 52 subjects including criminal law, marriage, divorce, bankruptcy, trade unions, electricity, economic and social plan, etc. (206) Division of powers in a federalism. The Union government enjoys exclusive power to legislate on the subjects mentioned in the Union list. The state governments have full authority to legislate on the subjects of state list under normal circumstances. However, both the center and the states can legislate on the subjects mentioned in the concurrent list. In case of contradiction between two, the law passed by Union legislature shall prevail. The residuary powers have been vested in the central government. A bicameral system is considered essential in a federation because it is in the upper house alone that the federating units can be given representation. The Constitution of India also provides for a bicameral legislature at the center consisting of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. While the Lok Sabha consists of the elected representatives of people, the Rajya Sabha mainly consists of representatives elected by the state legislative assemblies. However, all the states have not been given equal representation in the Rajya Sabha. Features of federalism. The basic characteristic features of federalism are given as under. For a federation, it is essential that its constitution should be a written one, to which the federal units as well as the center can refer. Accordingly, the Indian Constitution is a written document containing 448 articles and 12 schedules, and therefore it fulfills this basic requirement. In a federation, the Constitution should be supreme in source of strength. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and the laws passed by the Union or the state governments must conform to the Constitution. If any organ of state dares to violate any provision of the Constitution, the courts of law are there to secure the dignity of the Constitution. In federation, the Constitution should be rigid. This rigidity is specially desired by the federating units, so that the center does not amend the Constitution frequently to suit its interests. A rigid constitution, as we know, is one which cannot be changed easily. The Indian Constitution is largely a rigid constitution. General Studies, Mains, paper. All the provisions of the Constitution concerning federal-state relations can be amended only by the joint actions of the state legislatures and the Union Parliament. Such provisions can be amended only if the amendment is passed by a two-thirds road majority of the members present and voting in the Parliament, which must also constitute the absolute majority of the total membership, and ratified by at least half of the states. In a federation, there should be clear division of powers between union and states to enact and legislate within their own sphere of activity. The requisite is evident in our Constitution also. Unitary features of the Constitution. Indian Constitution is uniquely designed to meet the special requirements of Indian society. The framers of the Constitution have modified the true nature of Indian federalism by incorporating certain Unitarian features in the Constitution. This has given support to the argument that the Indian Constitution is federal in form, but unitary in spirit. Subjects of jurisdiction. The seventh schedule of the Constitution forms the basis for the demarcation of powers and jurisdiction of the Union and the states under a federal political framework. It provides for the Union list, the state list and the concurrent list. However, Parliament can legislate upon subjects of state list, if it is in the national interest. Such legislation is possible in case of passing of a resolution supported by not less than two-thirds vote of the members present and voting in the Rajya Sabha. Broader scope of union power. In case of any inconsistency between the laws made by Parliament and state legislatures under Article 249 and 250, the law made by the Parliament shall prevail, Article 251. In case of a state law being unacceptable to union law, on any subject enumerated in the concurrent list, the latter shall prevail, Article 254. Residuary powers of legislation are vested in Parliament, not in stale legislatures, Article 248. Government and Political Dynamics, Indian G. 207. The territorial reorganization. Parliament may by law admit into the Union or establish new state or states on such terms and conditions as it thinks fit, Article 2. Parliament may by law form a new state by separation of territory from any state or by uniting two or more states or parts of states or by uniting any territory to a part of any state. Besides this, Parliament may increase the area of any state, diminish the area of any state, alter the boundaries of any state and alter the name of any state, Article 3. Though the Constitution provides for some safeguards like introduction of such bills on the recommendation of the President and referring the bill to the concerned legislature for seeking its opinion, yet such safeguards too exhibit a unitary bias. The opinion of the legislature is not binding on the President. For such laws the Constitution provides for that these shall not be deemed to be an amendment of the Constitution under Article 368, Article 4. Thus, the Constitution provides for a flexible procedure for the reorganization of the states which could be effected by passing of a bill by simple majority. Emergency provisions. In the event of proclamation of financial emergency. In the event of proclamation of national emergency, the executive power of the Union, the members of these services are recruited and trained, extends to giving direction to any state as to the manner in which the executive power of the state has to be exercised. Article 353. Any or all of the provisions of Articles 268 to 279 violate the federal spirit. Subject to modification while the emergency is in operation. Article 354. The Constitution provides that the state machineries have to function in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. If they fail to do so, a situation arises, which is termed as failure of the constitutional machineries in the state. Such a situation empowers the President to assume all the functions of the state. It involves suspension or dissolution of the lower house of the state and the governor with his advisors acting as the President's representative. Article 356. Executive authority of the Union shall extend to giving directions to states which may include the following: reduction of salaries and allowances of the members of state public services, reduction of the salaries and allowances of the judges of the High Court, black circle reservation of money bills and other bills for the consideration of the President. Article 360. Role of Governor. The Constitution provides for the institution of the governor in the states. Article 153. The governor is appointed by the President. Article 155. The governor holds office during the pleasure of the President. Article 156. The governor can reserve a state bill for the consideration of the President. Article 200 to 201. All these provisions suggest that the governor acts as a kind of check on the autonomy and jurisdiction of the states. Single citizenship. Despite being a federation and dual polity in the country, the concept of dual citizenship is not followed in India. It is practiced in countries like USA, Australia, and Switzerland. In India, single citizenship prevails. All India services by the central government, but they are posted in the states, under the ultimate control of the central government. Thus, these services. Unequal bicameralism. The states are given unequal representation in the upper house of the parliament, i.e. Rajya Sabha. States are being represented on the basis of population. This also violates the principle of equality of every unit in the federation. Extra-constitutional factors. The main factors that have contributed to the growing strength of national government at the expense of state governments seems to have been sixfold: war politics, depression politics, welfare politics, technopolitics, grants and aid politics, and party politics. (208) The horrible conditions of war and economic depression demand unitary control for the effective protection of national interests. Similarly, the ideal of social welfare state has enjoined upon the national government to increase its scope of activity to eradicate the gigantic evils of poverty, unemployment, disease, starvation, ignorance, etc. The experts and technicians stress goals of development and lay down policies and programs. As these specialized services are mostly provided by the national government, the state governments carry out the plans, programs and instructions prepared by the technocrats working behind the rules of the central administration. In the context of grants and aid politics, center tends to dominate. The state governments live in a perpetual condition of financial difficulties. They not only have meager resources, but they are forced to collect money that they cannot spend. They are also forced to spend money in a particular way that they do not collect. They are highly dependent on the center. In India, both the union and state governments are controlled by the ruling party in a way that our federal pattern has become more political than administrative. Critical evaluation of the Indian federal system. The Constitution of India has deviated from the traditional federal systems like US, Switzerland and Australia and incorporated a large number of unitary or non-federal features, tilting the balance of power in favor of the center. This has promoted the constitutional experts to challenge the federal character of Indian Constitution in the following ways. Professor K.C. Weir has described the Constitution of India as quasi-federal. He remarked that Indian Union is a unitary state with subsidiary federal features rather than a federal state with subsidiary unitary features. However, there are other political scientists who do not agree with the above description. Paul Appleby characterizes the Indian system as extremely federal. Morris Jones termed it as a bargaining federalism. General Studies, Mains, Paper I. Ivor Jennings has described it as a federation with a strong centralizing tendency. He observed that the Indian Constitution is mainly federal with unique safeguards for enforcing national unity and growth. Granville Austin called the Indian federalism as a cooperative federalism. He described Indian federation as a new kind of federation to meet India's peculiar needs. While replying to the criticism of over-centralization in the Constitution, B.R. Ambedkar stated, "A serious complaint is made on the ground that there is too much centralization and the states have been reduced to municipalities." It is clear that this view is not only an exaggeration but is also founded on a misunderstanding of what exactly the Constitution contrives to do. The basic principle of federalism is that the legislative and executive authority is partitioned between the center and the states not by any law to be made by the center, but by the Constitution. The states are in no way dependent upon the center for their legislative or executive authority. The states and the center are co-equal in this matter. It is difficult to see how such a constitution can be called centralism. It is, therefore, wrong to say that the states have been placed under the control of center. In fact, the federalism in India represents a compromise between the following two conflicting considerations. These are 1. Normal division of powers under which states enjoy autonomy within their own spheres. 2. Need for national integrity and a strong union. Government under exceptional circumstances. The following trends in the working of Indian political system reflects its federal spirit. Territorial disputes between the states. Black circle disputes between states over sharing of river water. The emergence of regional parties and their coming to power in states like Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, etc. The creation of new states to fulfill the regional aspirations. Indian government and political dynamics. Demand of the states for more financial grants from the center to meet their developmental needs. 209. Assertion of autonomy by the states and their resistance to the interference from the center. Supreme Court's imposition of several procedural limitations on the use of Article 356 by the center. Cooperative federalism. In India, there is an urgent need of transforming center-state relations as per spirit of cooperative federalism. The cooperative federalism is a form of federalism where all three tiers of government, viz. the Constitution of India, provides for a federal center, State and local interact cooperatively and collectively to solve common problems. Though Indian planning apparatus strives for cooperative federalism in theory, but same is not much visible in practice. Therefore, the need of hour is to rise above partisan, sectarian politics and bring in cooperative federalism in the functioning of center-state relations. 14th Finance Commission report A Path Towards Cooperative Federalism. The report sought to curtail the successive discretion of the center in the distribution of resources through transfer mechanism, especially centrally sponsored schemes. It recognizes the fact that there are some CSS which can be better handled by the states and should be in the fiscal domain of the states, while others need the fiscal as well as expertise support from the center. It recommended that the state's share in the net proceeds of the tax revenues would be 42% against the 32% in the past, thus allowing greater freedom to the states in choosing their own path of development. It gave primacy to tax devolution as the route of resource transfer to states. Grants has to be divided into two broad categories on the basis of rural and urban population constituting Gram Panchayats and municipalities. Grants would be distributed to the states for local bodies on the basis of 2011 census. Besides, the ratio of basic to performance grant would be 90-10 with respect to panchayats and 80-20 in case of municipalities. 8 CSS, centrally sponsored scheme, will be delinked from support of the center. It facilitates greater fiscal responsibility for states. Now the center and states both are equal partners in the development of the nation in various fields. FFC did not make any recommendation regarding sector-specific grants, unlike 13th Finance Commission. In short, there will be more fiscal autonomy for the states and cooperative federalism will be the driving principle of development planning in India. Center-state relations system. Both the Union and the states are created by the Constitution and derive their authority from it. Yet, there is a criticism that India is a federal state with unitary features. The relations between the center and the states, which constitute the core of federalism, have been enumerated in Parts 11 and 12 of the Constitution under the heads of legislative, administrative, and financial relations. The Constitution establishes a dual polity consisting of the Union at the center and states at the periphery. Each is endowed with sovereign powers to be exercised in the fields assigned to them by the Constitution. Legislative relations. The functional realities, centralizing trends and changing concept of federalism find reflection in the scheme of distribution of powers adopted in our Constitution. This scheme seeks to reconcile the imperatives for a strong center with the need for state autonomy. These are the main considerations which were weighed by the framers of the Constitution in assigning to the center a preeminent role in all spheres of union-state arrangements, particularly in the constitutional scheme of distribution of legislative powers. The distribution of legislative powers between the Union and the states is one of the fundamental characteristics of a federal constitution. This can be achieved by a single, two-fold or three-fold enumeration of law-making powers.
హలో పదమ్మా నేను మళ్ళీ బాగున్నా
210. General Studies, Mains, Paper. Issue related to legislative relations of center and states are discussed below. Distribution of subject. The Constitution of India adopts a threefold distribution of the subjects of legislative power by placing them in 7th schedule in List I, Union, List 2, State, and List 3, Concurrent. Chapter 1 in Part 11 of the Constitution enumerates the provisions which govern Union-state legislative relations. It comprises 11 articles from 245 to 255. Out of them, the provisions in Articles 245, 246, 248 and 254 constitute the core of the distribution of legislative powers. Overriding powers of center. Under Article 245, 1. Parliament is competent to make laws for whole or any part of territory of India. Legislature of state may make laws for whole or any part of state. Under Article 245, 2. Laws made by Parliament can have extraterritorial effect, outside of Indian territory. Laws of Parliament also govern the Indian subjects and their property in any part of the world. For certain Union territories like Andaman and Nicobar, Lakshadweep and Dadra and Nagar Haveli, regulations made by the President have the same force as the Acts of Parliament. Such regulations may repeal or amend a law made by Parliament in relation to such territory. The application of Acts of Parliament to any scheduled area may be barred or modified by notifications made by the Governor. Subjects mentioned in the Union list are of national importance and only Parliament is competent to make laws on these subjects. For state list, only the states have exclusive power to make laws. Concurrent list is a common zone, where both the Union and the states are competent to make law, without any conflict. In case of a conflict between the central law and the state law, the central law prevails over the state law, with few exceptions. Residuary power. Under Article 248, Parliament has exclusive power to make laws on the subjects not enumerated in any of the three lists, entry 97 of Union List. Such powers include the power of making any law imposing a tax not mentioned in any of the three lists. It is determined by courts whether a particular subject falls under the residuary power or not. To determine whether a particular enactment falls under one entry or the other, it is the doctrine of pith and substance. Pith and substance here means the true object, the legislation or statute, and the competence of legislature which enacts it. Otherwise, the motives of the legislature are irrelevant for determining whether it has transgressed the constitutional limits of the legislative power. This principle is based on the maxim that you cannot do indirectly what you cannot do directly. It is known as doctrine of colorable legislation. Special powers of Parliament. Under Article 249, Parliament has the power to make laws in the national interest, with respect to any matter included in the state list. But this is for a temporary period. If Rajya Sabha passes resolution supported by not less than 2/3 vote of the members present in voting in that respect, this provision has been used thrice in 1950, black marketing, 1951, evacuee properties, in 1986. Under the Proclamation of Emergency, Article 250 empowers the Parliament to make laws for the whole or any part of the territory of India with respect to all matters in the state list. Such a law, however, shall cease to effect on the expiration of 6 months after the proclamation of emergency has ceased to operate. Under Article 252, if the legislatures of 2 or more states pass a resolution to the effect that it is desirable to have a law passed by Parliament on any matters in state list common to these states, Parliament can make laws in that respect. Under Article 253, Parliament has power to make any law for the whole or any part of the territory of India for implementing treaties and international agreements and conventions. Under Article 256, Parliament is empowered to make laws with respect to all matters in the Santa List when there is failure of constitutional machinery of the state under Article 356. Administrative relations. The success and strength of a federal polity depends on cooperation and coordination between the two levels of government, as it does on a distribution of powers and functions between them. This is true in administrative relations and a federation coordination between.
మరి ఇంత డాక్టర్ చదివే అంత ఉందా? ఇంటికి పోయి ఏం చేయాలి? నాకు ఇక్కడ హైదరాబాద్లో పని ఉందంటే నాకు చాలా పనులు ఉన్నాయి ఇంట్లో.
Indian government and political dynamics. 211. Union in states is ensured through providing the Union some means of control over states. During the time of emergency, Indian constitution works like a unitary government. In normal times, there are constitutional provisions which ensure the control of the Union over the states. Issues related to administrative relation of center and states are discussed below. Appointments to states. Power to appoint and dismiss the governor. Articles 155 to 156, through President. Power to appoint judges of High Court and power to dismiss members of State Public Service Commission. Articles 217,317 respectively, are vested in the center. Article 256 provides that the executive power of the state shall be so exercised as to ensure compliance with the laws made by the Parliament, and executive power of the Union shall also extend to the giving of such directions to a state as it may deem essential for the purpose. Directives from center. Article 257 provides that states must exercise their executive power in such a way so as not to impede or prejudice the exercise of the executive power of the Union in the state. The powers of the Union government also extend to giving directions to a state in some specific matters. These are as follows. Construction and maintenance of means of communication which are declared to be of national or military importance. Measures to be taken for the protection of the railway within the states. The Constitution prescribes coercive sanction for the enforcement of its directions through Article 356. Provision of adequate facilities for instruction in the mother tongue at the primary stage of education to children belonging to linguistic minority groups in the state. The welfare of STS. Formulation and implementation of schemes for delegation of power. Under Article 258, 1, Parliament with the consent of the state government can entrust to it any matter falling within the executive powers of the Union. Under Article 258, 2, Parliament is empowered to use state machinery for the enforcement of Union laws. For such purpose, it can confer powers or impose duties on state functionaries. Therefore, delegation of power is made with the consent of the state, but consent of the state is not necessary if such delegation is done by the Parliament by law. This implies that Parliament can interfere in the state administration, even without the consent of the state. State government has also the power to delegate its functions to the Union and its officers. Article 258a provides that governor of the state with the consent of Government of India can entrust such functions to the government, to which the executive power of state extends. Redressal of disputes. Article 261 provides that full faith and credit shall be given throughout the territory of India to public acts, records and judicial proceedings of the Union in every state. Article 261, 3, declares that final judgment or orders delivered or passed by civil courts in any part of the territory of India can be executed anywhere within that territory in the country. Under Article 262, Parliament Union can organize a body for adjudication of disputes relating to waters of interstate rivers or river valleys. Article 262, 2, declares that Parliament by law provide that neither the Supreme Court nor any other court shall exercise jurisdiction in respect of any such dispute. Under Article 263, President has power to establish interstate councils. These councils have duty of inquiring into and advising upon disputes which arise between the states. These councils also investigate and discuss the subjects of common interest between the Union and the states or between two or more states. The President has established councils like Central Council of Health, Central Council of Local Government and Urban Development Council. Financial relations. These relations are related to distribution of taxes as well as non-tax revenue and power of borrowing. Finance Commission, Article 280, recommends to the President on the distribution of net proceeds of taxes between the center and states. Constitution divides the taxing powers between the center and states in remarkable way.
Mhm.
212. General Studies, Mains, Paper. Issues related to financial relations of center and states are discussed below. Powers of taxation. Parliament has an exclusive power to levy the taxes enumerated in the Union list. There are 15 such taxes. State legislature has exclusive power to levy the taxes enumerated in the state list. There are 20 such taxes. Both the Parliament and the state legislature can levy the taxes enumerated in the concurrent list. There are 3 such taxes. The residuary power of taxation, i.e., the power to impose the taxes not enumerated in any of the 3 lists, is vested in the Parliament. Under this provision, the Parliament has imposed gift tax, wealth tax and expenditure tax. Grants and aid. Parliament can provide for grants and aid to states by the center. Such sums are charged on the Consolidated Fund of India, Article 275. The center can make public purpose grants to states and to any institution within the states, Article 282. The center can grant loans to states and also give guarantee in respect of loans raised by them, Article 293. Parliament can impose restrictions on interstate trade and commerce in the public interest, Article 302. Fiscal management. The accounts of the states shall be kept in such form as prescribed by the President on the advice of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, Article 150. The Parliament is empowered to appoint an authority to regulate the trade and commerce in India as per the provisions of Article 301 to 304. However, no such authority has been formed till now. Strengthening center-state relations through available mechanisms. The Supreme Court has jurisdiction to hear legal disputes between the states and center and among states. But the experience of the working of federations has shown that interstate disputes of a non-legal character arise frequently. It was therefore decided to provide some constitutional machinery for disposing of such differences. Different councils formed to strengthen center-state relations are discussed below. Interstate Council. The Constitution contemplates the creation of an interstate council, Article 263, for better coordination between the states and harmonizing the Union state in interstate relations with the aid of constitutional machinery. Therefore, power is given to the President to set up an interstate council charged with the duty of inquiring into and advising upon interstate disputes, investigating subjects of one or more states or the Union. Its duty is to make recommendations in particular for the better coordination of policy and action on any subject. As a result, Interstate Council, ISC, was formed in 1990 in this regard. Zonal Councils. The States Reorganization Act, 1956 has set up 5 zonal councils, i.e. one each for North Zone, South Zone, Eastern Zone, Western Zone and Central Zone. Each of these councils consists of the Union Home Minister, chief ministers of the member states and 2 other ministers nominated by the governor of the state concerned in administration of each union territory in the zone as the members. The Union Home Minister is the ex officio chairman of each of these councils. In each council, there are advisors from the Planning Commission and the chief secretaries of the state government concerned and development commissioners of states. These advisors do not enjoy a right to vote. The secretarial function of the zonal councils has been transferred to Interstate Council, ISC, Secretariat since 2011. Such councils have been intended for the promotion of collective approach in effort to solve common problems of the member states. They are also intended to foster interstate coordination and thereby strengthen the relations of center and the states. National Integration Council. The formation of the National Integration Council, NIC, is an important success in management of center-state relations. The NIC, chaired by the Prime Minister, has members, including union ministers, leaders of the opposition in the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, chief ministers of all the states and UTS with legislatures. It also includes leaders of the national and regional political parties, chairpersons of Indian Government and Political Dynamics. 213. National commissions, eminent journalists, public figures and representatives of the business and women's organizations. This council was set up in the early 1960s. The council reviews matters relating to the national integration and makes recommendations over such issues. The NIC aims at finding ways and means to combat the menace of communalism, casteism and regionalism. It holds regular meetings to discuss these issues and to find their viable solutions. National Development Council. In India, there is a federal constitution. Thus, it is very important that there should be a forum where the central and state leaders may meet and discuss their common problems. The National Development Council, NDC, came into existence in August 1952 as the result of an executive resolution of the Government of India. Functions of NDC. The functions of NDC are to prescribe guidelines for preparation of the national plan, to consider the national plan as prepared by the erstwhile Planning Commission and presently Niti Aayog, to assess the resources required to implement the plan and suggest measures to augment them, to consider important questions of social and economic policy affecting national development, to review the working of the national plan from time to time, to recommend steps for the achievement of the RIMs and targets set out in the national plan. Composition of NDC. The National Development Council comprises of the chairman, all union cabinet ministers, administrators of UTs, the chief ministers of all the states and the members of the Niti Aayog. The Prime Minister, who is the chairman of the Niti Aayog, acts as the chairman of the council. The secretary of the Niti Aayog acts as the secretary of the council. The union ministers and state ministers in charge of the related subjects are also invited to participate in its deliberations. In 1993, 6 committees of the NDC were set up to look into some of the critical areas of development. I. Committee on Austerity. E. Committee on Population. I. Committee on Employment. IV. Committee on Micro-Level Planning. V. Committee on Literacy. V. Committee on Medical Education. These committees place their reports before the NDC for final decision and recommendation. Meeting of NDC. The agenda of a particular meeting of the NDC consists of items suggested by the Niti Aayog, black circle items suggested by the central ministers, black circle items suggested by the state governments. The meetings of the NDC start with an address from the Prime Minister. The Secretary of the Council prepares a memorandum on each item of the agenda which is circulated among the members in advance. Evaluation of NDC. The NDC gives its advice at various stages of the formulation of a plan, and after its approval, the plan is presented to the Parliament for consideration. The Council has been largely responsible for giving Indian plans a truly national character. Its functioning reveals that there is hardly any matter of importance which it is not competent to discuss. Its preoccupations are many. Varied in a study, its original terms of reference fails to provide a total picture of its actual functioning. It has been quite successful in bridging and linking the Union government, the Planning Commission, and the various state governments. It has served as a good forum for discussions and free exchange of ideas, and has created a sense of high responsibility on the part of the state governments for making the plans a success. It has developed a very healthy convention of not putting its resolutions to vote and taking decisions almost unanimously. In addition, it concerns itself with important questions of social and economic policy affecting national development.
స్లీపర్ బస్ అందుబాటులోకి వచ్చి మన ఇంత టికెట్ ధరలు ఎలా ఉంటాయి సార్ సజ్జన సార్?
214. General Studies, Mains Paper. National Institution for Transforming India, Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog comprises of PM of India as chairperson, Governing Council consisting of CMs of all states and Lieutenant Governors of UTS, regional councils, full-time and part-time members, CEO and other experts. Objectives of Niti Aayog. The Niti Aayog will work towards the following objectives: to evolve a shared vision of national development priorities, sectors and strategies with the active involvement of states in the light of national objectives. The vision of the NTIT Aayog will then provide a framework national agenda for the Prime Minister and the Chief Ministers to provide impetus to. Black Circle to foster cooperative federalism through structured support initiatives and mechanisms with the states on a continuous basis, recognizing that strong states make a strong nation. To develop mechanisms to formulate credible plans at the village level and aggregate these progressively at higher levels of government, to ensure, on areas that are specifically referred to it, that the interests of national security are incorporated in economic strategy and policy, to pay special attention to the sections of our society that may be at risk of not benefiting adequately from economic progress, to design strategic and long-term policy and program frameworks and initiatives, and monitor their progress and their efficacy. The lessons learned through monitoring and feedback will be used for making innovative improvements, including necessary mid-course corrections. To provide advice and encourage partnerships between key stakeholders and national and international like-minded think tanks, as well as educational and policy research institutions. To create a knowledge, innovation and entrepreneurial support system through a collaborative community of national and international experts, practitioners and other partners. To offer a platform for resolution of intersectoral and interdepartmental issues in order to accelerate the implementation of the Development Agenda. To maintain a state-of-the-art resource center, be a repository of research on good governance and best practices in sustainable and equitable development as well as help their dissemination stakeholders. To actively monitor and evaluate the implementation of programs and initiatives, including the identification of the needed resources so as to strengthen the probability of success and scope of delivery. To focus on technology upgradation and capacity building for implementation of programs and initiatives. To undertake other activities as may be necessary in order to further the execution of the National Development Agenda and the objectives mentioned above. NITI Aayog aims to enable India to better face complex challenges through the following. Leveraging of India's demographic dividend and realization of the potential of youth, men and women, through education, skill development, elimination of gender bias and employment. Elimination of poverty, and the chance of every Indian to live a life of dignity and self-respect. Redressal of inequalities based on gender bias. Caste and economic disparities. Integrate villages institutionally into the development process. Policy support to more than 50 million small businesses, which are a major source of employment creation. Black circle safeguarding of our environmental and ecological assets. Evaluation of NITI Aayog. It is true that institutions of Planning Commission and NDC have outlived their utility. It was time to bring in fresh thinking. Though states of India have revenue earning sources, still they depend upon central government for funds and resources. Their need of making them financially viable. The aim of bringing in cooperative federalism is certainly a G idea to improve center-state relations. Indian government and political dynamics. 215. Important commissions and reports on center-state relations. Sarkaria Commission. Since the review of the Administrative Reforms Commission on the administrative aspects of the Union-State relation, 1966-67, much has happened in the realm of Union-State relations. In the wake of social, economic and political developments over the years, new trends, tensions and issues have arisen. Consensus and cooperation, which is a prerequisite for a smooth functioning of Union-State relations, is threatened by political confrontation. In this perspective, Sarkaria Commission was appointed in 1983 with the objective of reviewing the existing arrangements between the Union and the states while keeping in view the social and economic developments of the country. The Commission was expected to take into account the importance of unity and integrity of the country for promoting the welfare of the people. The important recommendations of Sarkaria Commission are given as under. Recommendations in Administrative Sphere Commission held the office of the Governor indispensable. It gave following recommendations to remove the criticism against the office appointment should be in consultation with State Chief Minister. Normally, full 5 years term should be allowed. However, removal or transfer, if necessary, should also be in consultation with the CM. Suggested certain qualifications for the incumbent. The President should decide on a bill reserved for his consideration within 3 months. Justice Sarkana said power to give directions is not a new federal. Article 256 and 257 embody the principle of executive supremacy of the Union. In our polity, several Union laws are to be administered by states. Article 256 merely seeks to ensure that states do actually carry them out. Article 257 aims at ensuring harmonious exercise of their respective executive power by the Union and states investing supremacy with the Union, in case of irreconcilable differences between the two. Thus, the Constitution opted to have Union laws enforced through state machinery. Commission did not feel all India services, ICE, were irrelevant, rather they are as much relevant today as earlier. No state should be allowed to opt out of them and more ICE should be created. Commission supported Union's legal ability to deploy its armed forces in a state without a request by latter and take whatever other steps are necessary to suppress the disturbance in discharge of its duty under Article 355. Commission regarded Article 356 as a drastic power. Depending on its proper use or not, it can be a safety mechanism for the system or destroy the equilibrium between the Union and the states. To prevent the latter, it illustrated grounds for imposition of Article 356. The power is to be used sparingly, after taking all possible steps to prevent or rectify a breakdown of Constitution. Next, a specific warning must be issued to the state, only then may it be resorted to. To resolve problems and to coordinate policy and action, Interstate Council, ISC, should be used more effectively both by the Union and the states. Recommendations in Legislative Sphere Commission had the view that in any federal polity, laws of the two levels of government, in their own sphere, may be inconsistent. It is to tackle such a situation that Article 246 and 254 ensure federal supremacy. It avoids conflicts and harmonizes Union and state laws. Federal legislative supremacy also exists in the U.S., Canada, Australia and West Germany. Commission expressed that states have no inherent claim on residuary powers. Residuary powers can also not be turned over to the concurrent sphere, as they include power to impose a residuary tax, which if put in the concurrent sphere would lead to double taxation and federal friction. However, non-tax residuary powers may be transferred to the concurrent sphere. Commission stated that maintenance of public order by use of armed forces of the Union has always been within the exclusive legislative competence of the Union. Both ARC and Sarkaria Commission agreed that under Article 355, Union has the suo motu competence to use its armed police forces in aid of civil power. Thus, there is no curtailment of states' powers. States called for a constitutional requirement of consulting them before legislating in the concurrent field. Commission agreed that consultation with states is needed. (216) Article 249 has the provision of built-in safeguards against its misuse. Commission noted that the use of Article 3 till date either had the consent of states or was based on views of a dedicated commission. Requiring state consent would make the act unworkable and against intention of Constitution framers. Article 3 should be retained unchanged. Regarding Article 368, Commission did not accept the demand, saying it would rigidize the process of amendment, making the Constitution outdated. Recommendations in Financial Sphere. Sarkaria Commission called on the Union to periodically revise duties under Article 268 and 269. Commission was of the view that taxation powers should not be made concurrent. Incentivizing reform is an aspect of cooperative federalism and also has an element of voluntary acceptance. Sarkaria Commission called upon the Finance Commission to itself look into them. Commission appreciated Center's steps towards consulting states in finalizing terms of reference of the Finance Commission. Both Planning Commission and Finance Commission have their roles. Further, plan transfer follows a predetermined formula approved by the NDC. The large size of funds is a natural outcome of development-related growth needs of states. Other transfers channelized through the Finance Ministry are purpose-specific and do not carry much repayment liability. Thus, the criticism about discretionary transfers is more theoretical. As regards borrowing powers of states, Commission recommended flexibility by distinguishing between short-term, medium-term, and long-term loans. Commission accepted Center's position that external assistance received by it was channeled by it to states as part of its integrated resource management. According to Commission, natural calamities should be seen as a national problem and states should bear a significant share of total relief expenditure burden. Union should only supplement the state's efforts. Punchy Commission Report. In 2007, under the chairmanship of Justice M. Punchy, a commission was set up to review center-state relations. The Punchy Commission gave detailed recommendations to improve General Studies, Mains Paper. Center-state relations. Some of the important recommendations are as follows. The Commission has proposed localizing emergency provisions under Articles 355 and 356, contending that localized areas, either a district or parts of a district, be brought under governor's rule instead of the whole state. Such an emergency provision should, however, not to be of duration more than 3 months. To make an amendment in the Communal Violence Bill to allow deployment of central forces without the state's consent for a short period. It has proposed that state consent should not become a hurdle in deployment of central forces in a communal conflagration. However, such deployment should only be for a week and post facto consent should be taken from the state. Among the significant suggestions made by the Commission is laying down of clear guidelines for the appointment of chief ministers. The order of precedence that ought to be followed by the governor in case of a hung house. 1. Call the group with the largest pre-poll alliance commanding the largest number to form the government. The single largest party staking a claim to form the government with the support of others. The post-electoral coalition with all partners joining the government. The post-electoral alliance with some parties joining the government and the remaining including independents supporting the government from outside. The panel also feels that governors should have the right to sanction prosecution of a minister acting against the advice of the Council of Ministers. However, the convention of making them chancellors of universities should be done away with. As for qualifications for a governor, the Punchy Commission suggests that the nominee should not have participated in active politics at even local level for at least a couple of years before her appointment. It also agrees with the Sarkaria recommendation that a governor be an eminent person and does not belong to the state where he is to be posted. Indian government and political dynamics. 217. The Commission also criticized arbitrary dismissal of governors, saying, "The practice of treating governors as political football must stop. There should be critical changes in the role of the governor, including fixed 5-year tenure as well as their removal only through impeachment by the state assembly." It has also recommended that the state chief minister should have a say in the appointment of governor. Underlining that removal of a governor for a reason related to his discharge of functions, it has proposed provisions for impeachment by the state legislature along the same lines as that of president by parliament. This, significantly, goes against the doctrine of pleasure upheld by the recent Supreme Court judgment. Endorsing an NCRWC recommendation, it says appointment of governors should be entrusted to a committee comprising the Prime Minister, Home Minister, Speaker of the Lok Sabha and Chief Minister of the concerned state. The Vice President can also be involved in the process. The Punchy Commission report recommends that a constitutional amendment be brought about to limit the scope of discretionary powers of the governor under Article 163(2). Governors should not sit on decisions and must decide matters within a 4-month period. Local self-government. India has long history in evolution and development of the local self-government institutions. It stands out as one of the pioneers in taking the reins of democracy to the very common people at the grassroots levels. The notion of direct democracy in Janapadas and Mahajanapadas is said to be the precursor of Panchayati Raj institutions in post-independence India. However, with the dawn of city dwellings, the idea of local self-government, LSG, was also extended to the urban areas, thereby making the notion of local self-government two-dimensional: rural local self-government and urban local self-government. Post-independence situation of local self-government. In the post-independence times, despite the zeal and fervor for democratization of the polity in the members of the Constituent Assembly, the Gandhian plea for a village-based system of political formation fostered by a stateless, classless society was initially rejected by the Congress Constitution Committee, believing that the Congress could neither forego its political role or become so utterly decentralized. However, Gandhi's stubbornness with the idea of Panchayat Raj finding a place in the constitutional framework of the country persuaded the framers to provide a place of relative insignificance to the dream of Panchayati Raj by placing it in Part 4 of the Constitution. But it was without any mandatory sanction for the governments to operationalize the Panchayati Raj with the inauguration of the Constitution on the 26th of January 1950. Committees on Local Self-Government. 2 committees gave important recommendations on local self-government. These are discussed under Recommendations of Balwant Rai Mehta Committee. Government of India appointed this committee in January 1957 to examine the working of the Community Development Program, 1952, and the National Extension Service, 1953, and to suggest measures for their better working. This committee was headed by Balwant Rai G. Mehta. It submitted its report in November 1957. It recommended the establishment of the scheme of democratic decentralization. Some other recommendations of this committee were establishment of a 3-tier Panchayati Raj system, a Gram Panchayat at the village level, b Panchayat Samiti at the block level, and c Zilla Parishad at the district level. Village Panchayat be constituted with directly elected representatives. Panchayat Samiti and Zilla Parishad be constituted with indirectly elected members. Panchayat Samiti should be the executive body. Zilla Parishad should be the advisory, coordinating and supervisory body. There should be a genuine transfer of power. Adequate resources should be transferred. 218. The recommendation was accepted by the National Development Council in January 1958. However, the Council did not insist on a single rigid pattern and left it to the states to evolve their own patterns suitable to local conditions. Rajasthani was the first state to establish Panchayati Raj in Nagaur district. Other states also created Panchayati Raj institutions, PRI. But there were differences from one state to another with regard to the number of tiers, relative position of Samiti and Parishad, their tenure, composition, functions and finances. Recommendations of Ashok Mehta Committee. In December 1977, the Janta government appointed a committee on Panchayati Raj institutions under the chairmanship of Ashok Mehta. It submitted its report in August 1978 and made 132 recommendations to revive and strengthen the declining Panchayati Raj system in the country. Its main recommendations are: the three-tier system of Panchayati Raj should be replaced by the two-tier system, that is, Zilla Parishad at the district level and below it, the Mandal Panchayat consisting of a group of village covering a population of the 15,000 to 20,000. A district should be the first point for decentralization under popular supervision below the state level. Zilla Parishad should be the executive body and made responsible for planning at the district level. There should be an official participation of political parties at all levels of Panchayat elections. The Panchayati Raj institutions should have compulsory powers of taxation to mobilize their own financial resources. There should be a regular social audit by a district-level agency and by a committee of legislators to check whether the funds allotted for the vulnerable social and economic groups are actually spent on them. The state government should not supersede the Panchayati Raj institutions. In case of an imperative supersession, elections should be held within 6 months from the date of supersession. The Chief Electoral Officer of State in consultation with Chief Election Commissioner should organize and conduct the Panchayati Raj elections. General Studies, Mains, Paper I. Development functions should be transferred to Zilla Parishad and all development staff should work under its control and supervision. Black Circle a minister for Panchayati Raj should be appointed in the State Council of Ministers to look after the affairs of the Panchayati Raj institutions. Seats for SC and Saint should be reserved on the basis of their population. Due to the collapse of the Janta government before the completion of its term, no action could be taken on the recommendations of the Ashok Mehta Committee at the central level. 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts. The 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts gave constitutional protection to the local self-government in the country. While the 73rd Amendment Act provides for the basic framework of the structure and functional dynamics of the Panchayati Raj institutions in rural areas, the 74th Amendment Act pertains to the municipal government of urban areas. These two pieces of legislation does not only give constitutional status to the institutions of local self-government but also identified the core issues concerning these institutions. The two legislations created two separate parts in the Constitution, known as Part 9 and Part 9, dealing with the Panchayati Raj and urban local self-government respectively. In addition, two new schedules, i.e. Schedule 11th and Schedule 12th, respectively, were also added. It contains the list of functions of the rural as well as the urban local bodies. In a nutshell, the two legislations marked out the functional space of the local self-government institutions in black and white, so that they may become the viable units of government in the country. These amendments created the following two institutions: State Election Commission. The most significant provision made by the 73rd Amendment Act regarding the structure of the Panchayati Raj bodies appears to be the creation of a state election commission in each state to conduct free and fair elections for these bodies from time to time. However, with the creation of a state,
ఎందుకబ్బా ధనుష్కోడి పోదాం ధనుష్కోడి కొట్టు చూడు ఎట్లా ధనుష్కోడి అంటే ఎట్లా
Indian government and political dynamics. 219. Election Commission in each of the states. The state government's monopoly over holding or not holding elections for these bodies got eliminated, proving to be the lifeline of the panchayats, the regularity of elections after the enactment of the 73rd Amendment Act has come to be the most fundamental change in the scenario of Panchayati Raj bodies in the country. Creation of District Planning Committee. In the context of the proper functioning of the bodies of local self-government, an innovative idea was provided by the 74th Constitution Amendment Act by inserting Article 243 to 2D in Part 9A of the Constitution, has been that of the District Planning Committee, DPC, in order to ensure a coordinated bottom-up planning in every district of the country. Predominantly an elected body, consisting of the members elected from amongst the members of the panchayats and municipalities in the district in proportion to the ratio between the urban and the rural population in the district, the DPC has been entrusted with the task of preparing a consolidated development plan for the all-round development of the district. It keeps in view the factors like matters of common interest between the panchayats and the municipalities, including spatial planning, sharing of water, other physical, natural resources, guaranteeing an integrated development of infrastructure, environmental conservation, consideration for the extent and type of available resources, including financial or otherwise, etc. The successful functioning of the DPCs would not only minimize the wastage of resources due to overlapping of functions and activities of rural and urban bodies in the district, but also provide a holistic view of the developmental imperatives of the district. In the long run, it would find a place in the developmental plan of state as the draft development plan prepared by the DPC and is sent to the state government for consolidation in the state plan. Panchayati Raj system. Under rural local self-government, rural local bodies are formed. Basically, these bodies are panchayats, gram sabha, panchayat samu, zilla parishad, etc. Important steps in the development of panchayats in India are as follows. Year 1952, 1957. Community Development Program Balwant Rai Meta Committee. 1959. Step. Inauguration of first panchayat in Rajasthan. 1977 Ashok Mehta Committee. 1984. Hanumantha Rao Committee on District Level Planning GVK Rao Committee on Administrative Aspects of Rural. 1986. Development L.M. Singhvi Committee. It recommended constitutional status to panchayats. 1989. 64th Constitutional Amendment Bill for grant of constitutional status to panchayats. It was defeated in Hajia Sabha. 1992. 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act passed constitutional status to panchayats. Panchayati Raj institutions. After 73rd Amendment Act, the constitutional reference acted as the stimulus to make efforts for the operationalization of the Panchayati Raj in country. Beginning with the Balwant Rai Meta Committee through the Ashok Meta Committee and afterwards, all the efforts at putting viability and vibrancy in the Panchayati Raj failed to yield any remarkable result till the passage of the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act 1993. They provided not only constitutional backing to these institutions, but also defined the operational space and other concomitant powers and resources to make them the real institutions of self-governance for the people. Since then, Panchayati Raj has come a long way thanks to the provisions of the 73rd Constitutional Amendment. Most of the primary hiccups in the proper and effective functioning of the Panchayati Raj institutions appear to have been removed. With regular elections, the Panchayati Raj institutions are emerging as the most formidable instrument of political training to the masses. They are in fact turning out to be the fine examples of democratic governance in the country, with the common people finding a say in the management of their resources in order to secure a reasonable level of life for their people.
ఆడగలు మాట్లాడు చెప్పు ఏమైంది ఏందట గొడవ హలో హలో ఏమైంది ఏమైంది మరి తెలుసు కదా మరి ఇట్లా ఎందుకు చేస్తున్నావు అందుకనే బంద్ చేసి వేసుకోవాలి కట్టెన్స్
220. The perspectives of the 73rd Amendment Act were very clear in providing for a uniform three-tier structure of the Panchayati Raj consisting of the village, block and the district levels. The Act laid down rules for a Gram Sabha in each village. Endowed with such powers and functions to be performed at the village level as the legislature of a state may provide by law. The elections in respect of all the members to panchayats at all the levels would be direct, with the elections in respect of the post of the chairman at the block and the district level remaining indirect. What is remarkable in this structural pattern of the Panchayati Raj is the provision of the constitutional status for the Gram Sabhas on the one hand and the uniform application of the Act in all those states which have a population of more than 20,000 on the other. Having a break with the past practices, the Act took away the discretion of the state governments to hold the elections for the panchayats. The 73rd Amendment Act laid down for the compulsory and periodic elections to the Panchayati Raj bodies. It fixed a uniform term of 5 years for all the Panchayati Raj bodies, and in the case of supersession for any reasons, elections were made mandatory to constitute the superseded bodies before the expiry of a time of 6 months from the date of the supersession. Reservation of seats in Panchayat Raj. The following points state reservation of seats in Panchayat Raj. Black circle seats shall be reserved for the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes in every panchayat. The number of seats so reserved shall be in the same proportion to the total number of seats as the population of the scheduled castes or scheduled tribes in that panchayat area bears to the total population of that area. Such seats may be allotted by rotation to different constituencies in a panchayat. Not less than 1/3 of the total number of seats shall be reserved for women belonging to scheduled castes or, as the case may be, the scheduled tribes. Not less than 1/3, including the number of seats reserved for women belonging to the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribe, of the General Studies, Mains, paper. Total number of seats to be filled by direct election in every panchayat shall be reserved for women, and such seats may be allotted by rotation to different constituencies in a panchayat. The offices of the chairpersons in the panchayats. at the village or any other level shall be reserved as the legislature of the state may provide. The legislature of a state may provide for reservation of seats in any panchayat or offices of chairpersons in the panchayat at any level in favor of backward class of citizens. Article 2431. Bar to interference by courts in electoral matters. Notwithstanding anything in this Constitution, black circle the validity of any law relating to the delimitation of constituencies or the allotment of seats to such constituencies, made or purporting to be made under Article 243K, shall not be called in question in any court. No election to any panchayat shall be called in question except by an election petition presented to such authority and in such manner as is provided for by air under any law made by the legislature of a state. Article 243-0. Powers and functions of panchayats. If the lack of the provisions for mandatory regular elections spelled doom for the panchayati Raj bodies, the absence of a uniform and clear demarcation of the functions and the concomitant powers to these bodies in most of the states led to the utter failure of the Panchayati Raj to become a formidable instrument of translating the developmental aspirations of the public into reality in most cases. Quite evidently, such state of things remained dominant for a fairly long period of time in the history of Panchayati Raj in the country, presumably due to the fact that the political leaders did not visualize the panchayats to be the instrument of real self-government for the people at the grassroots levels. The fact was blissfully glossed over that the panchayats can be an effective tool of making astounding contributions in developing healthy democratic traditions in the country.
చేయడానికి కాదు ఎందుకు చేయాలి అది బాధ చూసినావా మరి
Indian government and political dynamics. 221. Inculcating leadership qualities among the rural folk. Making planning for development more realistic. Development. Minor irrigation, water management and watershed. Fisheries, social forestry and farm forestry. Minor forest produce. Encouraging participation of the people in planning and programming for goal-oriented change. Reviving in the local people a spirit of responsible citizenship and self-confidence. Bringing the local people in the mainstream of national life economically, politically and psychologically. Ensuring more effective implementation of development plans. Relieving the administrative burden of the state and the central governments. Increasing the legitimacy of the system of governance. With these perspectives in view, the panchayats have been afforded a clearly demarcated sphere of functions and commensurate powers by the 73rd Constitution Amendment Act. Gram Sabha. Gram Sabha is the body consisting of persons registered in the electoral rolls of a village comprised within the area of panchayat at village level. Providing an indicative list of the activities which may be transferred to the Panchayati Raj bodies by the state governments in the form of the 11th schedule of the Constitution, the Central Act desisted from mandating straitjacket powers and functions to the various levels of the Panchayati Raj institutions. Functions of Gram Sabha. Consequently, in most of the states, in the post-73rd Amendment scenario, the Gram Panchayats are bestowed with the functions of agriculture, including agricultural extension, land improvement, implementation of land reforms, land consolidation and soil conservation, animal husbandry, dairying and poultry, black circle small-scale industries, including food processing industries, khadi, village and cottage industries, rural housing, drinking water, fuel and fodder, roads, culverts, bridges, ferries, waterways, and other means of communication. Rural electrification, including distribution of electricity, non-conventional energy sources. Poverty alleviation program. Education, including primary and secondary schools, technical training and vocational education. Adult and non-formal education. Libraries, cultural activities. Markets and fairs. Black Circle health and sanitation, including hospitals, primary health centers, and dispensaries. Family welfare. Women and child development. Social welfare, including welfare of the handicapped and mentally retarded. Welfare of the weaker sections, and in particular, of the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes. Public distribution system. Maintenance of community assets. The performance of these activities involves the local people in the governmental activities in such a way that without costing anything extra, people are made to feel their participation in the processes of governance and are inspired to come forward in a more frank manner in shouldering the responsibilities which concern them the most. Panchayat Samiti. While the functions of the Gram Panchayats are of very primary nature concerning the basic aspects of the rural life confined to the geographical areas of village, the scope of the functions of the block-level Panchayat body gets broadened to include those functions whose catchment area extends beyond the limits of one or two villages.
సరే బాయ్
222. Constituted for a host of villages representing the population of about 15,000 to 20,000, the block panchayat, called Panchayat Samiti in many states of northern India, consists of a chief, called block pramukh, and around 15 to 20 members in addition to a number of ex officio members. Acting through the Block Development Officer, BDO, who also functions as its Chief Executive Officer, CEO, the Panchayat Samiti is entrusted with such functions which not only requires some degree of expertise and financial resources but also involves the employment of a host of government employees, thereby introducing the element of interface between the people's representative and the government functionaries in a structured and intimate manner. The Panchayat Samitis are normally provided with adequate administrative and financial support in order to carry out these functions efficiently. District Parishad. Standing at the apex of the pyramidal structure of the Panchayati Raj bodies, the Zilla Parishad exists in the form of a guide and a monitor of the lower bodies to ensure that not only their plans and programs for developing their particular regions are integrated with the overall development plans of the district and the state, but they also discharge their responsibilities in accordance with the broad administrative and financial perspectives of the state government. Consisting of members directly elected by the people and headed by a member from amongst themselves elected for the purpose and known as the Zilla Pramukh, the Zilla Parishad is assisted in the performance of its functions by a senior government functionary, ordinarily drawn from the IAS cadre and called the Chief Development Officer. Amongst the functions of the Zilla Parishad, the salient ones include examining and approving the budget of Panchayat Samitis, issue directions to Panchayat Samitis for efficient performance of their duties, coordinate the developmental plans prepared by the Panchayat Samitis, advising the state government on all matters relating to development activities in the district, distribute funds allocated by the state to various Panchayat Samitis. Inform the divisional commissioner and the district collector about irregularities in the Panchayati Raj institutions and advise the state government on the allocation of work to be made among the Panchayati Raj institutions. General Studies, mains, paper. Financing of local institutions. Another notable feature having a bearing on the effective functioning of the Panchayati Raj institutions has been the availability of adequate financial resources to carry out the developmental functions. Since the enactment of the 73rd Amendment Act, ordinarily, the Panchayat bodies manage their resources from government grants and loans, proceeds from taxes levied by the way of fees and miscellaneous charges, in addition to the public contributions and income from property and certain investments. However, in post-1993 scenario, the financial viability of these bodies appear to have been streamlined with the constitution of a finance commission in every state once in 5 years to review the financial position of the panchayats and to make suitable recommendations to the state on the distribution of funds between the state and the local bodies out of the specified proceeds accruing to the consolidated fund of the state. Such provisions have come as blessings for the Panchayati Raj bodies for some reasons. These are as follows. Firstly, the financial assistance to be provided by the state government to the panchayats no longer remained a discretionary power of the state, as the stipulated amount of money would need to be transferred to the panchayats in accordance with the recommendations of the State Finance Commission. Secondly, since the transfer of resources to the panchayats became a mandatory exercise for the state government, it may be persuaded not only to augment its resources but may also take steps to allow the Panchayati Raj bodies to levy, collect, and appropriate suitable local taxes. Thirdly, the Central Finance Commission is now required on specific reference to suggest appropriate measures necessary to augment the accrual of finances in the consolidated fund of the state, so that the flow of funds to the panchayats in the form of grants and aid from the state may be optimized.
చదువుకోవడం ఇంటుకుంటా ఉండడం ఏమంటావు సాయి సార్ నేను అది చెప్పింది కదా మొత్తం యాడ్ చేసేది ఎట్టా ఒక్క నిమిషం నాకు ఎట్లా తిట్టు కుర్చీ కుర్చీ నవీను కూర్చోవాలి ఇప్పుడు మేము డిస్కషన్ కుర్చీ కుర్చీ తీరాపు ఇది ఏ మనిషిరా స్వామి నిజంగా మనిషి ఇది కదా ఇప్పుడు యాక్చువల్లీ నా కాడ వచ్చేసరికి ఇమేజెస్ ఉన్నాయి అనుకో
Indian government and political dynamics. 223. Compulsory and voluntary provisions of 73rd Amendment Act. Compulsory provisions. Organization of Gram Sabha in a village or group of villages. Establishment of panchayats at the village, intermediate and district levels. Direct elections to all seats in panchayats at the village, intermediate and district levels. Indirect elections to the post of chairperson of panchayats at the intermediate and district levels. 21 years to be the minimum age for contesting. Elections to panchayats. Reservation of seats, both members and chairpersons, for SCs and STS in panchayats at all. The 3 levels. Black circle reservation of 1/3 seats, both members and chairpersons, for women in panchayats at all. The 3 levels. Black circle fixing tenure of 5 years for panchayats at all levels and holding fresh elections within 6 months in the event of supersession of any panchayat. Establishment of a state election commission for conducting elections to the panchayats, constitution of a state finance commission after every 5 years to review the financial position of the panchayats. Voluntary provisions. Giving representation to members of the parliament, both the houses, and the state legislature, both the houses, and the panchayats at different levels falling within their constituencies. Providing reservation of seats, both members and chairpersons, for backward classes in panchayats at any level. Granting powers and authority to the panchayats to enable them to function as institutions of self-government, black circle devolution of powers and responsibilities upon panchayats to prepare plans for economic development and social justice, and to perform some or all of the 29 functions listed in the 11th schedule of the Constitution. Granting financial powers to the panchayats, authorizing them to levy, collect and appropriate taxes, duties, tolls and fees. Education norm for panchayat election. With reference to Haryana, the norms related to education such as minimum educational qualification were made compulsory for panchayat elections of Haryana. It ensures that candidate with basic education is able to more effectively discharge various duties which befall the elected representatives. One of the primary duties of civic body is to maintain sanitation within its jurisdiction. It will help to curb the untouchability, as most of these toilets in villages are open pits or with septic tanks, and about 1.5 lakh women clean human excreta in the country service by manual scavenging. It also helps to curb the open defecation in the rural India. To promote and spread the literacy level in the society, especially women education. Furthermore, men are changing their tendency to marry with the educated girls without even taking dowry, so that women can stand for the elections, even for the general seats. Ultimately, this situation leads to creation of better consensus among people. These new norms have helped to reinforce the gender imbalance in the grassroots level of the society. Black circle, it meant to elect model representatives for local self-government for better administrative efficiency. By setting example to others, one who aspires to get elected in civic bodies and administration can get the education and learning benefits to rule the smooth and effective functioning of the offices with much of responsibility and their own power of intelligence. Rural India is reeling under agrarian debts, and farmers are committing suicide to escape the debt trap. Somehow this qualification may stand as resolving the debt burden and debt trap. Supreme Court verdict. Upholding the constitutional validity of a law enacted by Haryana government to bar the illiterate from contesting panchayat polls in the state. The Supreme Court ruled that it is only education which gives a human being the power to discriminate between right and wrong, good and bad. (224) General Studies, Mains, Paper. Black circled. The top court stated that it would be valid for the legislature to disqualify a candidate from seeking election to a civic body if he or she lacks 3 tiers, basic norms of hygiene, by not having a functional toilet at home. Criticism. More than half of the women and 68% of the scheduled caste street women and 41% of the scheduled caste street men cannot contest in these local elections. Black circle education is beneficial to implement the government policies in appropriate way, but one can say that this is a failure of government machineries who are overburdened with the things of inefficiencies with poor results of the pre. The panchayat law is discriminatory and such criteria are arbitrary. Experience has shown that wisdom plays a greater role than education at local governance level, especially villages. Although more educated people should be part of the political system, more ground reforms are needed before such a law is implemented. The intent is right, but other factors also need to be looked into. It is always good that educated people become a part of panchayats. Defects in the Panchayati Raj system in India. The following points state highlight defects in the Panchayati Raj system in India. Unscientific distribution of functions. The Panchayati Raj scheme is defective insofar as the distribution of functions between the structures at different levels has not been made along scientific lines. The blending of development and local self-government functions has significantly curtailed the autonomy of the local self-government institutions. Again, it has virtually converted them into governmental agencies. Even the functions assigned to the panchayat and the panchayat samiti overlap, leading to confusion, duplication of efforts and shifting of responsibility. Incompatible relation between the three tiers do not operate as functional authorities. The tendency on the part of the higher structure to treat the lower structure as its subordinate is markedly visible. MP Sharma rightly observes the hierarchical domination and predominance, filters down step by step from Zilla Parishad to Panchayat Samiti and from them to the village panchayats. Needless to state that this kind of mutual relationship is not commensurate with the genuine spirit of democratic decentralization. Inadequate finance. The inadequacy of funds has also stood in the way of successful working of the Panchayat Raj. The Panchayati Raj bodies have limited powers in respect of imposing cesses and taxes. They have very little funda doled out to them by the state government. Further, they are generally reluctant to raise necessary funds due to the fear of losing popularity with the masses. Lack of cordial relation between officials and people. Introduction of the Panchayati Raj aimed at securing effective participation of the people. But in reality this hardly happens since the key administrative and technical positions are manned by the government officials. Generally there is lack of proper cooperation and coordination between the people and the official like block development officers, the district officers, etc. Again, the officers fail to discharge the development duties more efficiently and sincerely. Lack of conceptual clarity. There is lack of clarity in regard to the concept of Panchayati Raj itself and the objectives for which it stands. Some would treat it just as an administrative agency, while some other look upon it as an extension of democracy at the grassroots level, and a few other consider it a charter of rural local government. What all the more intriguing is the fact that all these conceptual images could coexist simultaneously, tending to militate against each other every now and then. Indian government and political dynamics. 225. Undemocratic composition of various Panchayati Raj institutions. Various Panchayati Raj institutions are constituted setting aside democratic norms and principles. The indirect election of most of the member to Panchayat Samiti only increases the possibility of corruption and bribery. Even the Zilla Parishad consists of mainly ex officio members. They are, for the most part, government officials. This negates sound democratic principles. Disillusionment on structural functional front. The performance of Panchayati Raj institutions has been vitiated by political caste factionalism, rendering developmental projects into chimeras. Corruption, inefficiency, scant regard for procedures, political interference in day-to-day administration, parochial loyalties, motivated actions, power concentration instead of true service mentality, all these have stood in the way of the success of Panchayati Raj. Furthermore, the power to supersede the local bodies on the part of the state government clearly violates the spirit of democratic decentralization. Administrative problem. The Panchayati Raj bodies experience several administrative problems. There are tendencies towards politicization of the local administration, lack of coordination between the popular and bureaucratic elements, lack of proper incentives and promotion opportunities for administrative personnel, and apathetic attitude of the government servants towards development programs, etc. Politics is an inevitable part of a democratic framework. The manipulative nature of rural politics is manifest in the techniques used at the time of elections. The fact-finding research teams observed that the caste system in rural India has made a mockery of the concept of rural development. Even the panchayat elections are fought on caste grounds, and the traditional dominant castes have maneuvered in such a way that they still occupy line positions of power in the changed setup. Once the dominant castes have managed to occupy important positions where the decisions are made, they find it easy to manipulate the plans to serve their vested interests. Consequently, the schism of caste grows wider day by day, alienating the low castes farther and farther from participating in rural development programs. Panchayats as a medium of social change. As expected by the 73rd Amendment Act that panchayats will become a carrier for social change has proved to be a failure because the representation provided to the women, SCS and STS has not yielded the expected results. The practice of sarpanch paddy is prevalent in Indian villages, and the lower caste representatives are subjugated by the upper caste's people. These trends are not at all healthy for the institutions of self-government in India. There is a need of eliminating these drawbacks with strong institutional mechanisms. Urban local bodies. Under urban local self-government, urban local bodies are formed. They are constituted of persons chosen by direct election from the territorial constituencies in the municipal area. However, the legislature of a state may, by law, provide for the representation of persons having special knowledge or experience of municipal administration, the members of Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, and the members of Legislative Council and Legislative Assembly of the state, representing constituencies which comprise wholly or partly the municipal area, and the chairpersons of wards committees. Empowerment of weaker sections of society and women by reserving seats for such groups is one of the important constitutional provisions of the constitutional amendment. The offices of chairperson are also to be reserved for SC Street and women. It gives a term of 5 years to the municipalities. States like Madhya Pradesh has given 50% reservation to women in local bodies. The Gujarat state has experimented with idea of compulsory voting in the local bodies election. These are significant signs of maturing of local bodies in India.
ఇప్పుడు తాతయ్య అవనైతే చెప్పాను కదా సీఎం ఇంటి ముందు కూర్చోబెట్టాడు వస్తే అరవాడు గవర్నమెంట్ మేమే వస్తున్నాం కదా మందు వాడికి వాడిని వదిలేద్దామంటారా లేకుంటే వాడిని తీసుకెళ్ళి జైలు ఎక్కుతారా ఇంతవరకు జైలు అవుతారా ఆయన ఉంటాడు జైలు అవుతారు కూర్చోబోతే కేసీఆర్ ఇంటి ముందు కూర్చోబోతే వాడు జైలు అయ్యారు అరెస్ట్ చేయారా మామూలుగా వాడి వాడి ఇంటి ముందు పోయి నిలబడితేనే అరెస్ట్ చేసి ఎక్కుతారు కూర్చోబోతే అరెస్ట్ ఎట్లా చేస్తాడు అది వేరే వేరే లిటిగేషన్లో పెడతారు మొన్న ఏమైంది తెలుసా కూర్చోబోసిందని చెప్పారు మొన్న రీసెంట్గా జరిగింది ఒకటి అయితే ఒకటి డీజీపీ ఒకటే డీజీపీ గారు ఒక డీజీపీ గారి ఇంటి ముంగట ఎండవాడు పోకుండా కూర్చోబోతుంది ఎద్దు పోయినందుకు వాళ్ళు తీసుకొని చేసేసారు రోడ్లో పోతారు రోడ్లో పోతుంది వేరు మరి బయట పోతుంది వేరురా రోడ్లో పోతే సైడ్ పోతే ఎంత చేయము రాజమాల మంచిగా పోతుంది తరం కింద పోతే మంచిగా
226. General Studies, Mains Paper. Types of Urban Local Bodies. The 74th Amendment Act provides for constitution of urban local bodies for providing civil administration in urban areas. Important types of urban local bodies are given as under. Municipal corporations. Municipal corporation is provided for big cities like Delhi, Mumbai, etc. It has 3 authorities, viz. the council, the standing committees, and the commissioner. A. The council, it is legislative wing of the corporation which deliberate upon all the important subjects. It consists of directly elected as well as nominated members. It is headed by mayor. The mayor is generally elected amongst the elected member of council. B. The standing committees, these committees look after the working of the council. They are constituted for the specific purposes like public health, education, public works, etc. C. The municipal commissioner, he is head of executive wing. He generally belongs to the bureaucratic machinery of the municipal corporation. He is responsible for the decisions taken by the council and the standing committees. Municipality. The municipalities are established in towns and small cities. They are established by an act of state legislature. A municipality is composed of councillors elected by the local population. Seats have been reserved for SCS and STs according to their proportion in the population of the town, and 1/3 road of the seats have been reserved for women. The presiding officer of a municipal board is called the chairman, who is elected by the voters of the town. An executive officer looks after the day-to-day administration of the municipality. Notified Area Committee. A notified area committee is created for the administration of 2 types of areas: a fast-developing town due to industrialization in a town which does not yet fulfill all the conditions necessary for the constitution of a municipality, but which otherwise is considered important by the state government. Unlike the municipality, it is an entirely nominated body. All the members of a noted area committee, including the chairman, are nominated by the state government. Thus, it neither an elected body nor a statutory body. Town Area Committee. A town area committee is set up for the administration of a small town. It is a semi-municipal authority and is entrusted with a limited number of civic functions like drainage, roads, street lighting, and conservancy. It is created by a separate act of a state legislature, and its composition, functions, and other matters are governed by the act. Cantonment Board. A cantonment board is established for the municipal administration for the civilian population in the cantonment area. It is set up under the provisions of the Cantonments Act of 2006. It works under the administrative control of the Defense Ministry. A cantonment board consists of partly elected and partly nominated members. Township. It is a type of urban government established by the large public enterprises to provide civic amenities to its staff and workers who live in the housing colonies built near the plant. The township form of urban government has no elected members. Port Trust. This type of urban government is established by the large public enterprises to provide civic amenities in the port areas like Kochi, Chennai, etc. They also manage and protect the ports. A port trust is created by an act of parliament. It consists of both elected and nominated members. Special Purpose Agency. Various states have set up specific agencies to perform particular functions and are known as special purpose agency. These are function-based and not area-based entities.
లేకపోతే ఆల్రెడీ నేషనల్ ఎన్నికలు అరెస్ట్ చేసి
పది కోట్లు ఆయన ఇచ్చారు.
ఇప్పుడు మనలాంటి అని చెప్పి వాడు చూసుకుంటాడు. వాడు లండన్ నుంచి అమెరికా నుంచి పుట్టినోడు వాడు బీజోడు ఉంటాడు. బిజినెస్ క్లాస్ పెట్టాడు. బిజినెస్ కోసం రారా బిజినెస్ క్లాస్ పెట్టినాడు. వాడు పేదోడు ఉంటాడా? ఎంతమంది ఉంటాయి వాడికి గవర్నమెంట్ చేసిన రోడ్లోనే ఉన్నోడు తిరుగుతుంది, పెద్దోడు తిరుగుతుంది. అవునా బిజినెస్ క్లాస్ ఎవరు పేదోడు ఎవరు రాలేదు. నేను ఏమంటున్నా బిజినెస్ క్లాస్లో ఒక్కోసారి ఏమైందంటే ఎమర్జెన్సీగా వచ్చి ఉండొచ్చు, టికెట్లు దొరకం. మీకు అక్కడ క్లాస్ దొరకకపోతే బిజినెస్ క్లాస్ రారా? ఏంటంటే మరి పైన పైన ఏముంటాడు బాగా పెట్టుకుంటాడు. ఫోన్ చేస్తున్నా కొంచెం రోజు అవుతుంది. మా మధ్య చెప్పింటే వచ్చేసరికి ఒక లక్ష కొడుకు వచ్చేసరికి మొదలు అనుకున్నాడు. ఇచ్చేవాళ్ళు కదా వాడు. అది కాదు వాడు కోసుకుంటా అంటే కోసుకుంటూ ఒక రోజు పెట్టుకుంటారా పేపర్ రోజు పెట్టుకోవచ్చు అంటే ఏమంటున్నా ఇప్పుడు ఈ డైరెక్ట్ నేను చెప్తున్నా ఆ టైంలో జరుగుతుంది వద్ద రంజిత్ అయితే వాళ్ళు అడ్రస్ అయిపోయి వస్తా నా కొడుకు పోయి మొట్ట నోట్లో పెట్టచ్చు వాడే వస్తాడు అడ్రస్ చెప్పాడు. ఐస్ క్రీమ్ తీసుకుంటాడు ఐస్ క్రీమ్ దాన్ని చేసి మాసుకోవడానికి మళ్ళీ రంజిత్ గారు సేఫ్ వచ్చు కదా అడుగు నువ్వే అడుగు రూమ్లో మానే బుద్ధులు
Indian government and political dynamics. 227. 74th Constitutional Amendment. Act and reforms the recommendations and suggestions of several commissions and committees appointed by the central government to improve the urban bodies resulted in the enactment of the Constitution, 74th Amendment, Act, 1992. Earlier, state governments were free to manage their local bodies as they wished. The amendment made statutory provisions for the establishment, empowerment and functioning of urban local self-governing institutions. The main provisions of this act can be grouped under two categories: compulsory and voluntary. Compulsory provision. Some of the compulsory provisions which are binding on all states are as under. Black Circle Constitution of Nagar Panchayats, municipal councils and municipal corporations in small, big and very big urban areas respectively. Black Circle reservation of seats in urban local bodies for scheduled castes, scheduled tribes roughly in proportion to their population. Black Circle reservation of seats for women up to 1/3 road seats. The State Election Commission, constituted in order to conduct elections in the Panchayati Raj bodies, will also conduct elections to the urban local self-governing bodies. The State Finance Commission, constituted to deal with financial affairs of the Panchayati Raj bodies, also looks into the financial affairs of the local urban self-governing bodies.
మనం 200 సంవత్సరాలు మొట్టమొదటి
Tenure of urban local self-governing bodies is fixed at 5 years, and in case of earlier dissolution, fresh elections are held within 6 months.
నేపాల్లో ఏమంటారు మన
Voluntary provisions.
వాళ్ళు ఏమంటారు సామంత
Some of the voluntary provisions which are not binding but are expected to be observed by the states are as under:
మేము డిగ్నిటరీ ఉంటా
giving voting rights to members of the union and state legislatures in these bodies,
హైదరాబాద్ అంతే
providing reservation for backward classes,
ఇండిపెండెంట్
Black Circle giving financial powers in relation to taxes, duties, tolls and fees, etc.
స్టేట్ అంటే చెప్పు
Black Circle making the municipal bodies autonomous in devolution of powers to these bodies to perform
సెక్యూరిటీ కౌన్సిల్ కూడా
some or all of the functions enumerated in the 12th schedule added to the Constitution through this act.
ఇక్కడ ఉంది
In order to prepare plans for economic development, in accordance with the 74th Amendment, municipalities are now regulated in a fairly uniform manner in all the states.
కూడా పార్టీషన్ చేస్తే సరిపోదు కదా
Functions of urban local bodies: it is a common practice to divide the organization of a corporation or a municipality into two parts, which are:
మీ కలవలేదు హైదరాబాద్
1. The deliberative, 2. The executive. The corporation, council or municipal board or council consisting of the elected representatives of the people constitutes the deliberative part. It acts like a legislature. It discusses and debates on general municipal policies and performance, passes the budget of the urban local body, frames broad policies relating to taxation, raising of resources, pricing of services and other aspects of municipal administration. It keeps an eye on municipal administration and holds the executive accountable for what has been done or not done.
లేదు
The executive part of municipal administration is looked after by the municipal officers and other permanent employees.
కాలేదు ఒక
In the corporations, the municipal commissioner is the executive head, and all other departmental officers like engineers, finance officers, health officers, etc. function under his per control and supervision.
ఏమన్నారంటే
In a large corporation, such as Delhi or Mumbai Municipal Corporation, the commissioner is usually a senior IAS officer. In the municipalities, the executive officer holds a similar position and looks after the overall administration of a municipality.
ఆయన వాడు
Powers of urban local bodies. The state legislature may endow the municipalities with such powers and authority which would be necessary to enable them to function as institutions of self-government. It may include Black Circle preparation of plans for economic development and social justice. Black Circle implementation of the schemes related to the economic development and social justice, including those mentioned in the 12th schedule. 1. Urban planning including town planning. 2. Regulation of land use and construction of buildings. 3. Planning for economic and social development.
అంటే ఒకటి అక్కడ పెడతారు పెట్టిన తర్వాత సైన్యం పెడుతుంది వాళ్ళందరినీ
వాళ్ళని చెప్పింది ఏంది? వాడే వచ్చి అడిగిండు
అవును వాడే వచ్చి అడిగిండు కాకపోతే వాడు ఇది అడగలేదు నేను మీ దాంట్లో కలవను నాకు ఈ స్టేట్ అది ప్రైజ్ అడగలేదు వీళ్ళే వాళ్ళకి ఆఫర్ చేశాడు సరే ఇప్పుడు ఉంటురా నీ ఇష్టం ఉన్నప్పుడు నువ్వు మా దాంట్లో కలవరా అని
ఆఫర్ కాదు మేము మీ దాంట్లో కలిసి ఉంటాము కాకపోతే ఏంటంటే రూల్స్ రెగ్యులేషన్స్ కొన్ని నియమాలు మాత్రము మాకు సంబంధించిన వరకు కొన్ని ఉంటాయి సాంప్రదాయాల ప్రకారం మా ప్రకారం జరగాలని చెప్పిండు అవి ఏమేమిటి ఒక హిమాచల్కు ఒక జమ్మూ కాశ్మీర్కు అట్లా సరిగా అస్సాంకు ఇవన్నీ వచ్చేసరికి వాళ్ళ ఏంది ఆ స్టేట్లలో ఉండకూడదు లేదంటే వాళ్ళ ఊరు ఉండకూడదు అక్కడ ల్యాండ్ పంపుకోకూడదు అక్కడ అమ్మాయిలు చేసుకోకూడదు ఇవన్నీ ఉంటాయి అక్కడ
228. General Studies, Mains, Paper 2. 4. Roads and Bridges. 5. Water supply for domestic, industrial, and commercial purposes. 6. Public health, sanitation, conservancy, and solid waste management. 7. Fire services. 8. Urban forestry, protection of the environment, and promotion of ecological aspects. 9. Safeguarding the interests of weaker sections of society, including the handicapped and mentally retarded. 10. Slum improvement and upgradation. 11. Urban poverty alleviation. 12. Provision of urban amenities and facilities such as parks, gardens, playgrounds. 13. Promotion of cultural, educational, and aesthetic aspects. 14. Burials and burial grounds, cremations and cremation grounds and electric crematoriums. 15. Cattle ponds, prevention of cruelty to animals. 16. Vital statistics including registration of births and deaths. 17. Public amenities including street lighting, parking lots, bus stops, and public conveniences. 18. Regulation of slaughterhouses and tanneries. Financial resources of urban, local bodies. Municipal corporations and municipalities raise their own resources from a variety of sources, as provided for in the respective municipal laws. Their own revenue sources are income from taxes, fees and fines, and earning from municipal enterprises like land, tanks, markets and shops, etc. Besides, these bodies receive grants from the state. Property tax on land and buildings is the most important source of income of most urban local bodies. Other taxes levied by them are advertisement tax, professional tax, etc. Octroi still remains an important source of income of municipalities in Western India. Now, the trend is toward abolishing this tax as it obstructs the free flow of traffic on highways. They also charge fines for breach of municipal rules and regulations. From municipal shops, markets, and rest houses, municipalities often earn considerable sum of revenue. It is a general practice for states to give grants to their municipal bodies to improve their revenue position. State grants in aid may be on ad hoc basis, or it can be on the basis of certain principles like size of population, slums concentration, location of town. Some of the taxes and rates collected by urban bodies are property tax, water tax for water supplied, sewerage tax, fire tax, taxes on animals and vehicles, theater tax, duty on transfer of property, octroi duty on certain items brought into the city, education cess, tax, and professional tax. Some other sources of income are fines and fees, such as fees on tebazari, on tukats and chabatras, license fees on cycle rickshaw, bicycles, etc., rent from municipal shops, and fines imposed for violation of municipal bylaws. Direct elections of mayor. Mayor is an important authority in the urban local bodies. India introduced the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments to introduce democracy at the grassroots levels. However, the institutions of democracy at the grassroots levels remain largely unempowered, and one such institution is of the mayor. A direct elected mayor system would help in the following ways. It goes with the spirit of 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. It provides for local self-government, but the current system of government appointed commissioner is against this spirit. Black circle. It goes with the spirit of democracy. The executive power must be vested in an elected head who is democratically accountable. Will reduce the excessive state control over local bodies and introduce much-needed transparency. Provide more autonomy to the mayor, thus making him more accountable and the ULB more responsive. It may also lead to more devolution of power to ULB because of an elected head. Challenges in direction elections. Lack of will on the part of state governments to devolve authority. Black circle conflicts between municipal commissioners and mayors.
గోల్డ్ అస్సాం సిటీసీ టీ 1 kg. ఎందుకు బాబు 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 ఇద్దాం బాబు 85 రూపాయలు బాబు కన్సిడర్ అవైలబుల్ ఐటమ్స్ 1 kg. నమ్రి కదా సామే చూడరా సామే నమ్రి అదే అంతా చూడు.
అరే వాడు అన్నగా ఏదాన్ని కొట్టుడున్నా ఇంకో బ్రాండ్ బ్రాండ్ చేసి మారుతుంది. ఇందులో ఆకులు ఉన్నాయి చూడు, ఇవన్నీ ఆకులే ఉన్నాయి. ఇది వేరే దాంట్లో ఆకులు కాదు, పొడి ఉంటుంది.
వాళ్ళ ఫోన్ చేసి తెప్పిద్దామాట అయితే
నీకు పంపించడం
ఒక డబ్బా.
Indian government and political dynamics. 229. If directly elected mayor belongs to party in minority in municipality, conflict with other members. Because of this, whole system was scrapped in Himachal Pradesh. Legislator may see mayor as a rival and may undercut his authority. May blur lines between three tiers of government union, state and local, self-government. Possible solutions for challenges. More powers may be devolved on mayors. To avoid conflict between commissioner and mayor may be made executive head and given powers pertaining to finance. To avoid conflict between legislator and mayor, voter awareness may be created to explain their separate responsibilities. With more devolution of powers and streamlining of the system, mayor can be an important force in driving the city development. The 7 union territories at present are Andaman in the country. Conclusion. The plight of the local self-government institutions in India is reflective of the attitude of the political leaders in power. As the LSG happens to be one of the most effective instruments of ensuring the involvement of common people in the processes of governance by guaranteeing them a role in the formulation and execution of policies and programs of rural development, it has never been a favorite idea of the leaders. Hence, despite being a novel idea of democratic decentralization with potential of deepening the ethos of democracy and spirit of participatory governance, the operationalization of LSG appears more to be a formalistic ritual rather than a true experience in rural and urban self-governance. If, for instance, the provision for time-bound compulsory elections to these institutions have assured a continued existence for them, there still exist a number of dubious instrumentalities in the hands of both the politicians as well as bureaucrats to cripple the efficient functioning of these bodies. The need, therefore, appears for a concerted and sustained effort on the part of the stakeholders in the successful functioning of the LSG institutions to administrator. Remain ever vigilant against any move to dilute the efficiency of these bodies on the one hand and start a campaign for further strengthening of the SG system in the country on the other. Union territories. According to Article 1 of the Constitution, the territories of India can be categorized in 3 types. 1. Territories of the states. 2. Union territories. 3. Territories that may be acquired by Government of India at any time. At present, there are 29 states and 7 union territories. The states are the member of the federal system in India and share powers with the center. The union territories, on the other hand, are those areas which are under the direct control and administration of the central government. Hence, they are also known as centrally administered territories. Nicobar Islands, Delhi, Lakshadweep, Dadra and Nagar Haveli, Daman and Diu, Puducherry and Chandigarh. The Union territories have been created for a variety of reasons. These are mentioned below. Delhi and Chandigarh for political and administrative consideration. Puducherry, Dadra and Nagar Haveli, Daman and Diu for cultural distinctiveness. Andaman and Nicobar Islands and Lakshadweep for strategic importance and distance from mainland. Special treatment and care of the backward and tribal people of Mizoram, Manipur, Tripura and Arunachal Pradesh, which later became states administration of Union territories. Articles 239 to 241 of the Constitution deal with the Union territories. Even though all the Union territories belong to one category, there is no uniformity in their administrative system. Every Union territory is administered by the President acting through an administrator appointed by him. An administrator of a Union territory is an agent of the President and not head of state like a governor. The President can specify the designation of an administrator. It may be Lieutenant Governor or Chief Commissioner of.
అది 8106 అది ఉంది కదా, నా నా ఫోన్పే చేయరా? ఓకే మళ్ళా.
230. General Studies, Mains Paper. Comparison between states and union territories are given below. States. The President can also appoint the governor of a state as the administrator of an adjoining union territory. In that capacity, the governor is to act independently of his council of ministers. The Parliament can make laws on any subject of 3 lists for the Union territories. This power of Parliament also extends to Puducherry and Delhi, which have their own local legislatures. This means that, the legislative power of Parliament for the Union, they have autonomy. Territories on subjects of the state list remain unaffected even after establishing a local legislature for them. The Parliament can establish a High Court for a Union territory or put it under the jurisdiction of the High Court of adjacent state. Delhi is the only Union territory that has a High Court of its own. The Bombay High Court has got jurisdiction over 2 Union territories, Dadra and Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu. The Constitution does not contain any separate provisions for the administration of acquired territories. But the constitutional provisions for the administration of Union territories also apply to the acquired territories. Advisory Committees of Union Territories. Under the Government of India, Allocation of Business, Rule 1961, Ministry of Home Affairs is the nodal ministry for all matters of Union territories, UTS, relating to legislation, finance and budget, services and appointment of lieutenant governors and administrators. All the 5 UTs without a legislature have the Forum of Home Ministers Advisory Committee, HMAC. It has administrator, member of parliament from the respective union territory, member from the local elected bodies e.g. district panchayats and municipal councils. Committees are nominated as members. Meetings of the HMAC are chaired by the Union Home Minister or in his absence, by the Minister of State in the Ministry of Home Affairs. The committee discusses the general issues relating to social and economic development of the Union territories. Their relationship with center is federal. They share a distribution of power with the center. Union territories. Their relationship with center is unitary. They are under the direct control and administration of the center. They do not have any autonomy. There is uniformity in their administrative setup. Their executive head is known as governor. There is no uniformity in their administrative setup. Their executive head is known by various designations such as administrator or lieutenant governor or chief commissioner. An administrator is an agent of the president. A governor is a constitutional head of the state. Parliament cannot make laws on the subject of the state list in relation to the states except under extraordinary circumstances. Parliament can make laws on any subject of the three lists in relation to the Union territories. Scheduled and tribal areas. Article 244 of the Constitution envisages a special system of administration for certain areas designated as scheduled areas and tribal areas. The fifth schedule of the Constitution deals with the administration and control of scheduled areas and scheduled tribes in any state except the four states, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. The sixth schedule of the Constitution, on the other hand, deals with the administration of the tribal areas in the four northeastern states, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. Administration of scheduled areas. The scheduled areas are treated differently from the other areas in the country, because they are inhabited by aboriginals, who are socially and economically backward and special efforts need to be made to improve their condition. Therefore, the whole of the normal administrative machinery operating in a state is not extended to the scheduled areas and the central government has somewhat greater responsibility for these areas. Indian government and political dynamics. 231. The various features of administration contained in the fifth schedule are as follows. Declaration of scheduled areas. The president is empowered to declare an area to be a scheduled area. He can also increase or decrease its area, alter its boundary lines, rescind such designation or make fresh orders for such redesignation on an area in consultation with the governor of the state concerned. Executive power of state and center. The executive power of a state extends to the scheduled areas therein. But the governor has a special responsibility regarding such areas. He has to submit a report to the president regarding the administration of such areas, annually or whenever so required by the president. The executive power of the center extends to giving directions to the states regarding the administration of such areas. Tribal Advisory Council. Each state having scheduled areas has to establish a tribal advisory council to advise on welfare and advancement of the scheduled tribes. It is to consist of 20 members, 3/4 of whom are to be the representatives of the scheduled tribes in the state legislative assembly. A similar council can also be established in a state having scheduled tribes but not scheduled areas therein if the president so directs. Law applicable to scheduled areas. The governor is empowered to direct that any particular act of Parliament or the state legislature does not apply to a scheduled area or apply with specified modifications and exceptions. He can also make regulations for the peace and good government of a scheduled area after consulting the tribe's advisory council. Such regulations may prohibit or restrict the transfer of land by or among members of the scheduled tribes, regulate the allotment of land to members of the scheduled tribes and regulate the business of money lending in relation to the scheduled tribes. The Constitution requires the President to appoint a commission to report on the administration of the scheduled areas and the welfare of the scheduled INBs, but compulsorily after 10 years of the commencement of the Constitution. Administration of the tribal areas. The Constitution under 6th Schedule contains special provisions for the administration of tribal areas in the 4 northeastern states, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. The various features of administration contained in the 6th Schedule are as follows. The tribal areas in 4 states, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram have been constituted as autonomous districts. But they do not fall outside the executive authority of the state concerned. The governor is empowered to organize and reorganize the autonomous districts. Thus, he can increase or decrease their areas or change their names or define their boundaries and so. If there are different tribes in an autonomous district, the governor can divide the district into several autonomous regions. Each autonomous region to have a district regional council, consisting of council 30 members, of whom 4 are nominated by the governor. The district and regional councils administer the areas under their jurisdiction. They can make laws on certain specified matters like land, forests, canal water, shifting cultivation, village administration, inheritance of property, marriage and divorce, social customs and so on. But all such laws require the assent of the governor. The district and regional councils within their territorial jurisdictions can constitute village councils or courts for trial of suits and cases between the MBES. They hear appeals from them. The jurisdiction of high court over these suits and cases is specified by the governor. The district and regional councils are empowered to assess and collect land revenue and to impose certain specified taxes. The acts of parliament of the state legislature do not apply to autonomous districts and autonomous regions or apply with specified modifications and exceptions.
కాళ్ళన్నీ ఫ్రీజ్ అయిపోతాయి, చేతులు ఫ్రీజ్ అయిపోతాయి,
నాకు
కాళ్ళు మొత్తం ఫ్రీజ్ అయిపోతాయి, ఆ కాళ్ళు మండుతుంది తెలుసా? కాదు కాదు ఇదో కాళ్ళు వచ్చేసరికి మండినాయి అలా
ఎవరికి
మండలేదు నీకు ఆ మండలేదంటే అది
కాకపోతే ఇది దిగిన తర్వాత కుక్కలు వచ్చినాయి బ్రేక్ పెట్టాయి దిగేటప్పుడు జనం జాగ్రత్త కదా ఇది గట్టిగా పట్టిన పడ్డసరికి ఇలా కుక్కలు వచ్చాయి రెండు మొత్తం పెట్టింది వాళ్ళ కిలోమీటర్ రాకుండా ఎక్కిన గ్రేట్ మంచిగా అనిపించింది ఫస్ట్ కిలోమీటర్ ఎక్కేదానే అది తిరిగింది 10 కిలోమీటర్ ఉంటాయి కదా 50 కిలోమీటర్ అప్పుడు 10 తిరిగింది ఆ తర్వాత అప్పుడు 10 నిమిషాలు కూర్చుంది ఇక తర్వాత నుంచి అలవాటు అయిపోయింది ఇప్పుడే ఎక్కువ రంజయ్ పోలే